Thank you for being here. We'll begin tonight at the Upper Legislative Chamber, where lawmakers have taken another major step towards modernizing the country's military legal system. With the passage of a bill seeking to repeal and reenact the Armed Forces Act, sponsor of the bill, Abdulaziz Yaradua, says the legislation aims to align Nigeria's defense structure with current constitutional and security realities, noting that the existing law, rooted in decrees of 1960s, no longer meets modern operational and governance standards. News Central's Sagir Ibrahim brings details of these and more.
It's the last day of plenary for the week.
The national anthem.
The day commenced swiftly with the bill seeking to scrap the Armed Forces law. The bill sponsor in the lead debate says that it aims to reenact a fresh, constitutionally compliant and operationally responsive legal framework for Nigeria's armed forces.
The bill upholds the supremacy of the Constitution and integrates fair hearing and due process into military justice. It corrects such provision as Section 173, ensuring that administrative reports like boards of inquiry no longer serve as convictions without trial.
The bill enjoyed wide support from lawmakers who described it as long overdue.
Reports of boards of inquiry set off by military authorities should not serve as a basis for conviction, but rather it should be subjected to a trial by a court of law before such conviction shall be upheld. Because as it is, it violates the principles of nemo judice in causa sua. You cannot be a judge in your own cause. This bill also seeks to subject military authorities to the command of the commander-in-chief, that is democratically elected president, or in a nutshell, subjects military authorities to the authority of democratically elected institutions.
So in repealing and reenacting this bill, I would like the committee to look into these causes. Like they just appointed the Chief of Naval Staff, Chief of Air Staff, and Chief of Army is cause 41. All the people in the Navy, in the Army, and in the Air Force, they are gone.
SB 791, second reading taken. The bill is referred to the Committee on Defense, Army, Air Force, and Navy to report back within 4 weeks.
The proposed Armed Forces Repeal and Reenactment Bill seeks to align military operations with Nigeria's constitution and global human rights standards, introduce stronger civilian oversight, modernize military justice, and ensures fair hearing within the system. From the National Assembly, Abuja, for News Central, Sagir Ibrahim.
Sagir, who was at the Senate, joins us now for further update. He's been monitoring the motion as it played out in the House. He's now also joined by a policy strategist, Sam Amadi. We're also having, for this conversation, legal practitioner, Ejike Okpa, who will be helping with his thoughts as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Sagir, let me start with you giving us further insight as to what played out at the House today. From the video you shared with us, there seemed to be overwhelming support for the bill.
I must add, good evening, Felicity. Plenary started as usual, and then the first business of the day, of course, started with the presentation of this bill for second reading by Katsina Senator Abdulaziz Yaradua. During the lead debate of his basic principles, Senator Yaradua had mentioned, as a matter of fact, that Nigeria's military remains the cornerstone of Nigeria's security and sovereignty, but alluded to the fact that some of the establishment, the foundational framework establishing the Nigerian military are obsolete to the extent that it's been in existence since 1960s. Some of it comprised decrees, and the last time that the bill was consolidated was sometime in 2004, considering that that's maybe 20, 21 years ago. So hence the need, he says, for the repeal, the scrapping of the bill and the reenactment of a fresh one. Of course, he gave additional reasons, being that the bill seeks to provide a comprehensive reform and also align the armed forces governance with constitutional principles. But then again, one thing that we have raised eyebrow of quite a number of us who observed the proceedings was when the mover of the bill, the sponsor of the bill, and also lawmakers who supported the bill, mentioning something around the areas of administrative reports and boards of inquiry not serving as the basis for conviction, but rather a trial by a court of competent jurisdiction, raising the question of whether when army officers are found to have erred and have gone through, the process of court-martialing, what happens next? Does this mean that when the bill is passed, they still have to be subjected to processes of the court, within the judicial system before, a holistic sanction or penalty is meted on them? These are some of the controversies or the questions that have been raised as a result of the bill. But then again, the bill passed second reading. The bill has been committed to, referred to the Committee of Army, Navy, Air Force, and also Defense, and they're expected to report back to plenary with the report on the bill in 4 weeks' time.
Sagir, this question must have come up because we know that the first time this bill was brought before the House was in May. And then we had this situation with WAEC the other day, and then there's been reactions as to what the conduct of an officer should be. The timing of the second presentation, was there any conversation around this?
I must say that during the course of conversing and bantering whether this is necessary or not, in the newsroom, we actually spoke around the area of some people connecting what happened with the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory and, of course, the naval officer to the bill. But at this point, I can only say it's a coincidence, bearing the fact that, this incident happened between 24 to 48 hours. So it really has to be a coincidence that the move for this bill to be read the second time, came. But then again, of course, not just the issue with the Minister of the FCT and the naval officer, but also questions around whether this is coming up right now because of the rumors and the issues around a purported coup attempt that we had heard earlier. And of course, we know what happened after the purported coup, even if the federal government had come out and, of course, the military hierarchy had come out to say nothing like that happened. All right. We still saw the rejig of the military defense hierarchy. So then again, speculation, but none to directly connect, the second passage of this bill to, as the case may be.
Sagir, let's allow you go catch your much-needed rest. Thank you for the update. Samabadi, let me just jump off that. Is it a coincidence? That's on the one hand, and then from both a legal and operational standpoint, do you agree that the current Armed Forces Act requires change to bring it to reflect constitutional and global defense realities? Please check your device. I think it's muted because we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, better. We can hear you, please. Go ahead.
So, I say first, thanks for having me. I think it might be a coincidence or it may not be. I haven't worked as advisor in the National Assembly. Oftentimes, contemporary issues may make the Senate leadership place a bill to, for hearing, for consideration. So it might relate to the moment. But more importantly, I think that some aspects of that bill good aligns with human rights. Some are overreaching, in my view, and undermines, maybe, for example, the military inquiry boards and all that have rights without court intervention to discipline and dismiss, military officers or personnel. That's even the US, that's standard practice. You don't have to go through the rigorous notion of a civil judicial trial before the military can discipline the officers. In the cases around maybe imprisonment or death sentence for alleged coup or whatever, there may be some need for significant judicial review. But the theory of judicial deference would mean that institutions like the military have certain procedures that are not necessarily. I think some of Nigerian lawyers and people overread the requirement of fair hearing in the Constitution. Fair hearing can be depending on the issue, subject matter, and administrative body. Fair hearing for traffic offences. When you go for a license and they deny your license, that is a quasi-judicial conduct. It doesn't require the level of fair hearing that you get for criminal offences in civil court. So I think that there are some areas that I think they need to think through again. For example, areas of vesting operational control of the military over the Minister of Defense and all that. That impinges the prince priority. The commander-in-chief should have full, control of the military and, delegate and authorize defense ministers and other secretaries. In the U.S., you also have secretary of each of those who work like administrative managers, of that system. So I think they should be very careful so that we don't assume that we have to place the military in all their segments within civil control. The military civil control does not necessarily mean that the military institutional procedure for discipline has to become as accountable and reviewable by courts as other aspects. That's not the real meaning of military civil. The military is under civil control. That's why the president is a civilian elected. And so they are under the president's control. And that's enough for civil military control. So I would argue for some level of due process review of some of the proposed amendments, but they could whittle down on the prerogatives and the structure of the military as an institution.
All right, Ejike, the seeming consensus on the floor of the House was that this bill was long overdue, particularly when it came to reviewing the age of recruitment into the first. Persons under the age of 18 should not be in the army. But one wonders, we already have existing laws like the Child Rights Act. Why has this remained a gray area that now requires this action to unify it, perhaps?
You said in your introduction, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just somebody who has done a lot of expert witness in court. So I'm very familiar with how the court works in Nigeria as well as the US. But, back to your question, what it is that, 18, if the Nigerian government, decide that 18 is too young to join the military and they pass that law, that becomes the law relevant to them. In US, 18-year-olds are considered adults. That's the age you are right to vote. And then, or even though in Texas, for instance, you have to be 21 to be able to buy alcohol. So all of those laws and regulations they have to be relative to the area where they are going to be enforced. And so, remember, I don't know whether you were even born at the time, Idietis Spieth, when he was made governor of Rivers State in 1967, when Biafra broke away and the states were being created. I think he was 19 years old, and he's still alive. And he was a Navy captain or some sort of rank, and he was made governor of a state. I think in the history of Nigeria, is probably the only person at that age who assumed such a state responsibility. So when it comes to what the Nigerian Senate is trying to do, you have to separate, the role of the military and that of the civilian. Yes, in the civilian organization or democracy, you have a civilian as commander-in-chief, but there are certain conduct of the military that has to be limited within the military, laws. So like Amadi said, we have to make a distinction between a disciplinary act and a criminal act. If a soldier commits an act that amounts to the level of criminality, then where do you try him? Do you try him in a civilian court, or do you try him in a court-martial court? By peers of his own, people of his own peer level, or if it's something that he took off his uniform and is in his village, and nobody recognizes him as a military officer, and he does things, does that amount to him being tried, in a civilian court? At that time, the court can come in and say, strip him of all that military benefits. Say, you did this while you're in Abuja, and we're going to try you in a civilian court. So there's got to be a distinction. In America, they have what they call the JAG, J-A-G, which is Judges Advocate general, which is, lawyers in the military that practice law. So when things happen, it is done like you are in a civilian court. You have to defend your position. You have to defend your right. I don't know whether Nigeria has it. So I don't know where Nigeria is trying to copy and paste, but they don't have to copy and paste anything, but they have to look at universally how the military rules apply to people in uniform. Because if you begin to dilute that, it's probably going to affect the morale of those who wear uniform in defense of the country.
All right, Sam, I only have 1 minute, please, and then we'll give another 1 minute to EJK. One prominent section that was raised was 173, which allows administrative findings like board of inquiry to lead to dismissal without trial. Is this admissible? I mean, is this defensible, rather, in a constitutional democracy? And how do you see this affecting the rights and morale of personnel?
You should, in every democracy, have the right to discipline their staff. For example, in the U.S., they need Secretary of War as, sacked some of military officers, sometimes of conduct, sometimes of policy change. So I think we shouldn't control how most institutions have the right to civil service disciplines, sacks civil servants based on tribunal procedure. I think it's a very reasonable proposition. The military has the right to discipline and sack their staff without any resort to civil. But they are being charged for military failure, not for any criminal. They're not being sent to jail. So it's enough trial that they have there. And by the way, we have our military advocates who also appear for them there. And there's a provision that says whether they should appear in civil court. Why should the military advocates appear in civil court? These legislators mix up things they don't understand properly. That doesn't work. You appear in Nigerian court because you're a lawyer, whether you are military or police, you appear. You don't appear because you're a military lawyer. So I think they mix up things there.
EJK, what direction should this bill, if you accept that it's time for it, should focus more on?
Again, my point is that a discipline, a discipline can be because of insubordination. A discipline can be a war, without official leave or something. Those are disciplines. But if a soldier were to kill another soldier in barracks, do you take him to a civilian court to be tried, or do you court-martial him, and then punish him and sentence him? And so those are the distinctions that needs to be made, because again, the military is totally different. It's not like the police. Where when things happen, you try, like, again, I'm going to talk about the U.S. because I serve on the Dallas Community Police Oversight Board. I know how those things work. So my point is that in a case of a military, these are people who are armed to defend the country. If they do something in the barracks or while they are in uniform, what punishment do they get? Make a distinction between discipline because of insubordination or not showing up on time, as opposed to criminal act. So the criminal acts that a soldier commits, if you commit this act, this is what you're going to face. All right, that is where that...
I'm so sorry. I'm told that's
That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, all the time.
No, thank you. It's an interesting conversation to have, and I'm happy they're having this. But the Nigerian public have to weigh in. The Nigerian Bar Association, the people who have interest in rights of people, whether you're in uniform or civilian,
everyone has to be a part.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here tonight. We appreciate your time. You're watching tonight on News Central. A reminder of our top stories. Senate seeks to reenact Armed Forces Act aimed at criminalizing command involvement in courts-martial. House of Representatives direct immediate suspension of planned commencement of computer-based examinations. It is now in Huru as President Trump signs bill to end U.S. government shutdown following House of Reps voting in Washington. The House of Representatives has urged the federal government and the West African Examinations Council to suspend plans to conduct the 2026 Senior School Certificate Examination using computer-based testing. The resolution followed an urgent motion of public importance raised on the floor of the House, warning that the policy can lead to mass failure, which can also result in depression among students, especially in rural areas where many schools lack computers, computer teachers, internet access, and steady electricity. The House notes that WAEC exams are critical for university admission, and introducing computer-based testing at a time that there is no adequate preparation in place can be disastrous.
Concerned that the outcome of the WAEC result of students who are considered to be leaders of tomorrow using CBE will be devastating if allowed to commence, leading to massive failure, frustration, drug abuse, and other social vices. Right Honourable Speaker and my distinguished colleagues, the House resolve as follows: to direct the Federal Ministry of Education and the Federal Ministry of Education and the Examination Board, the WAEC, to suspend commencement of the policy with immediate effect. Urge the Federal Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the state, to include in the 2026 budget, 2027, 2028, and 2029, the recruitment of computer teachers, construction of computer hall with internet facilities, and supply of standby generators, and also monitor adequate provisions in private schools before commencement of the policy in 2030.
Also, the federal government has scrapped the national policy mandating the use of indigenous languages as the medium of instruction in Nigerian schools. Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, announced the cancellation on Wednesday at the 2025 Language in Education International Conference organized by the British Council in Abuja. The cancellation, according to report, was approved at the 69th meeting of the National Council on Education held in Akure, Ondo State from November the 3rd to the 7th. The policy, approved in 2022 as the National Language Policy, stipulated that children from early childhood education to primary 6 should be taught in their mother tongue or the language of the immediate community. I'm now joined by an education researcher, Dr. Peter Ogudoro, to help unpack this development. Thank you very much for being here. I mean, the minister cited evidence-based, data-driven research by his ministry, and he says the policy just recently enacted destroyed the education system as pupils and students often advance to higher classes without learning essential skills. Are you aware of this data? Is there a consensus on this matter in your circle, and is mother tongue teaching a problem for us?
Well, the minister probably knows the source of the data that they have. But if we are talking in a global context and giving the information, those of us who are professionals in this industry, giving the information we have, we don't have evidence that supports the position that the Ministry of Education has taken at this point in time, because we have places where young people, children have been taught in their mother tongue, and they are generally the countries where education has also been proven to have been delivering the purposes for which we send children to school. And those countries include the UK. Even within the UK, what you find is in a place like Wales, the children there, even though they are within an environment where English is largely spoken in the streets, they are still taught in their mother tongue at the beginning stages of their education. And this is the country that gives us English language. In Japan, children are taught in their mother tongue from the beginning stages. In China, it's the same. As we speak, Finland is the country that is ranked #1 in terms of consistency with respect to production.
Yeah, but what about the argument? I'm sorry to interject, but it's imperative I do. What about the argument put by the minister that because of our language complexity, we have some language are even extinct, and then in one area you use the language and you move to another area, you almost become redundant. Doesn't that argument hold water? Because some of these countries you're mentioning, they don't have multiplicity of languages like we do here in Nigeria.
Well, we acknowledge that challenge, and we cannot pretend that that challenge is not there. But we do know that definitely, no matter how hard we try, we may not be able to cater for every Nigerian child in terms of teaching them in their mother tongue, since we have over 200 languages. But there are languages here that we call major Nigerian languages, which are spoken widely, even by those who may not be technically described as having those languages as their mother tongue. For example, Hausa language is spoken widely in northern Nigeria. And I tell you that over 70% of children in northern Nigeria, no matter what their mother tongue originally may be, are able to relate with the rest members of their communities in Hausa language. And they see Hausa language as more or less their mother tongue. So if you teach them in Hausa, you are not making a mistake. But if you insist on English language, you are going to create a lot of challenges that you may not, that will not permit them to learn as effectively as they should learn. I think where we are getting it wrong here is that most of the time in our country, we tend to chase shadows rather than focusing on substance. You see, we just hear that children fail exams, and instead of interrogating the failure and finding out the root of the matter, we just run with the idea of people fail. Why did they fail? The reason why children are not doing well in school is not necessarily because they are being taught in mother tongue. It's because we haven't got good quality teachers in our classrooms across the country.
So that begs the question. That's begs the question about the 2030 implementation date. Knowing how we are in Nigeria, do you believe that the suggestion by the House will be met? A computer in every nook and cranny of the country, internet access, mobility, teachers. Will we meet that date? And do you think that a WAEC will listen to the submission?
Well, if they don't listen, their scandalous failure will convince them that they are treading the wrong path. I think I'm standing with members of the House of Representatives on this one. And I have consistently said that we are not ready to make CBT the only way to handle WASC in our country. We haven't come close to getting ready, is the truth of the matter. So anybody who insists that all our children in the year 2026 will have to be examined in all the subjects that they are going to write, including multiple choice essay and practical questions, that all of those things will be done via computers. So such that amounts to cracking a very expensive joke. It's not going to work. It's not a realistic idea. It's not feasible. We haven't got what it takes, manpower-wise, technology-wise. Even with JAM that conducts only a two, more or less a 2-hour exam, they're still struggling.
Doc, some people will argue with you that Nigeria has what it takes if we put our mind to it, but that's a debate for another day. Thank you very much.
No. It's not that we can't do such a magic. Nigeria doesn't have what it takes. We haven't got the technology in play. This is my sector. I have been doing research in this sector.
All right. Like I said, that is another conversation for another hour at least. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure, Felicity.
The Premium Bread Makers Association of Nigeria is sounding the alarm over rising production costs that threaten the survival of the baking industry. At the third edition of the PBAN Day Out, stakeholders from across the industry converged on Lagos to exchange ideas, explore productivity strategies, and push for policy reforms. News Center's Victor Mbadike reports.
The once vibrant bakery sector are shutting their doors, squeezed by rising costs and dwindling profits. But today, hope is rekindled. Key players in the baking and confectionery industry have gathered under one roof, not just to lament, but to learn, grow, and survive.
Looking at the environment, the dwindling economy in Nigeria, people's purchasing power, so many bakeries are shutting down. That's why we came up with the theme of today, business of baking, pathway to profitability, productivity, and growth. So the whole essence is like we want our members and even people that are not members to come and be trained how to turn their business into a profit-making business.
With inflation biting and operational costs soaring, many bakeries have folded. But those still standing are hungry for solutions.
Most of our inputs are imported into the country. 98% of the wheat we consume in Nigeria, we use in making bread, is imported. We do about 5.1 million metric tons of wheat in Nigeria every year. Nigeria is able to produce only 300,000 metric tons out of 5.1 million. So where is the backward integration? How will Nigerians get job? We are farming our job rather than retaining job in our country.
Of course, you can see in the last 2-3 years, the ingredient prices have been skyrocketing, flour, sugar, name it, until recently. But for us in Crown Flour Mills, what actually we look at is the level of knowledge. How do we even deepen, upscale the knowledge of bakers so that they maximize whatever their production is?
Beyond rising cost, the industry faces another challenge: consumer confidence. Some Nigerians have grown skeptical about bread consumption, citing fears over harmful additives and poor hygiene practices.
There are irreducible minimal standards you will meet before we admit you into our food. First of all, you must not use harmful additives. 2, you must use environment-friendly equipment that are calibrated. 3, you must be registered with NAFDAC. 4, you must have good manufacturing practices in place. 5, you must subscribe to good standard operating procedures. If we see a member that is producing with an unwholesome material, we will discipline that same person and report the person to the government.
Whether it is restoring public trust or mastering productivity, the baking industry is rising to the challenge, one loaf at a time. In Lagos, for the U Central, Victor Mbadike.
The Niger Delta Development Commission has provided financial support and palliatives to affected individuals who suffered losses due to tanker Inferno accidents that claimed lives and destroyed property in Agbo Delta State early this year. My colleague Austin Azu completes the report.
On January 5th, 2025, a dark cloud hung over Agbo Delta State following a tanker incident that claimed lives and property. Authorities say the incident was caused by brake failure, which led to tanker falling and exploding.
We have facilities, machines and facilities worth over 40 million naira. Now the cash now they cry for. The goose wonder. See here, now my major store.
The NDDC board chairman, Sagir Ibrahim, was part of the delegation of dignitaries that visited the site of the Inferno, offering words of condolence to the victims and promising hope and succor in the days ahead.
And we will definitely see how best we can support to support the affected persons.
Now, Ost First Charity Foundation, in collaboration with NDDC, are here in Agbo to provide financial support and palliatives to the victims of the Agbo Inferno incidents in both Ika South and North.
I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, for sponsoring this noble initiative. Your commitment to the welfare of the people of the Niger Delta region is truly commendable.
The NDDC board chairman, Sagir Ibrahim, identified that financial support and palliatives were not commensurate with life lost, but assured the 67 victims of the Inferno that the little support given to them would enable them to invest in their businesses and bounce back.
You feel the pulse of the people, you determine their wants and needs, and then you do what you are meant to do. And that's what we do in NDDC.
The beneficiaries thanked the NDDC and its partners for the financial assistance and palliatives given, with commitments to invest them in their businesses.
On behalf of these people I mentioned, the victims and those who lost their lives, the families, I'm expressing my profound appreciation to NDDC and Ost Foundation for bringing succor to our corridors. We are indeed grateful to you.
But because you are there and you love your people, you decided to push it. Today, you are going to put smiles on people's faces. We are grateful unto you.
I have not had this opportunity before, but let me here thank Mr. President
for the confidence that he has reposed in my son. And I assure Mr. President that my son as the chairman will do everything that he can to bring development to the parts of Nigeria that so desperately need it.
The victims who were categorized received cash support of 6 million naira and below, alongside various palliatives. In Delta, for News Central, Austin, Azu.
Outside our shores, an Italian journalist, Gabriele Nunziati, lost his job at the Rome-based news agency, Agenzia Nova. This was after he asked at a press briefing if Gaza Strip should be rebuilt, with payments from Israel drawing a comparison to how Ukraine is being reconstructed with costs attributed to Russia. While Nunziati says he fully stands by the legitimacy of his question and does not regret it, his employer says the question was technically incorrect and caused embarrassment. The International Federation of Journalists and the European Federation of Journalists have called for his reinstatement, stressing that asking tough questions is a key part of journalism. And in the United States, Congress has voted to end the longest government shutdown in American history, bringing relief after 43 days of paralysis that left hundreds of thousands of federal workers without pay. The Republican-led House of Representatives approved a Senate-passed funding package largely along party lines to reopen federal agencies through January. Within hours of the Senate's decision, President Donald Trump signed the bill during an event in the Oval Office, formally ending the record-breaking shutdown that had crippled Washington for more than 6 weeks. Tonight returns with business, sports, and entertainment news. Do stay with us.
This segment is brought to you by MoneyPoint.
In business, Nigeria's federal government has suspended the 15% on import duty on premium motor spirits and diesel earlier approved by President Bola Tinubu in October 2025. The Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority confirmed the suspension in a statement signed by its Public Affairs Director, George Eneta. The policy proposed by FIRS Chairman Zach Adedeji and backed by the presidency was designed to align import costs with market realities, strengthen the Naira and promote local refining under the Renewed Hope agenda. However, operators warned it could hike fuel prices, worsen inflation and undermine economic stability. We also tell you that Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke has presented a 705.794 billion naira 2026 appropriation bill tagged Budget of Economic Transformation to the State House of Assembly. The budget allocates about 55% to capital expenditure and 45% to recurrent spending, comprising 135.01 billion naira for personnel and 182.41 billion naira for overheads, including pensions and gratuities. Projected revenue includes 221.68 billion naira from FAC, 199.57 billion naira independent revenue, and 268.35 billion naira in other receipts. Adeleke said the plan builds on gains from 2025 and aligns with the 2026-2028 medium-term expenditure framework. Speaker Adewale Ebedun commended the governor's transparency and pledged legislative scrutiny for equitable implementation. At the equities markets, the all-share index closed at 146,981.17 points, up 1.08% as market capitalization increased to 93.48 trillion naira. The rebound reflected renewed buying interest across key sectors as investors took advantage of recently depressed stock prices. Now, looking at sectoral performance, we look at the banking sector that actually advanced by 3.8% in gains, where we saw tier 1 stocks such as Zenith Bank and GTCO get some sort of gains now. Insurance rose 4.58%, supported by renewed interest in ICO and Cornerstone Insurance. Oil and gas also inched up 0.65%, lifted by modest demand for Seplat and Total Energies. Consumer goods also appreciated 1.73% as Nigerian breweries and Dangote sugar attracted fresh bids, while industrial goods slipped 0.09% following mild profit taking in Dangote cement. Now, the market posted a strong recovery driven by bargain hunting and improved sentiment. That's it on Business News. I am Lekon Onabanjo.
Kate has tonight's entertainment news. Hello, Kate.
Hi, Felicity. Good to see you again.
Same
Welcome
here.
back. All right, moving on in the world of entertainment, Fuji legend Adewale Ayuba is calling on Nigeria's Afrobeat heavyweights to help push Fuji music beyond borders. Speaking on Apple Music Radio with Adekunle Gold, the Bonsue Fuji king urged artists like Tiwa Savage and other global acts to collaborate with him to make Fuji a worldwide sound. Now, Ayuba praised Adekunle Gold for his efforts in fusing Fuji elements into his songs, describing it as a perfect blend of tradition and modern rhythm. And he emphasized that Fuji, one of Nigeria's oldest music genres, deserves international recognition, just like Afrobeats. According to him, Fuji is complete music filled with love, dance, and energy. With unity, they can make the world feel it. Now, moving on, Adele set for her acting debut. The British songstress Adele is gearing up to make her first ever intertwined fate of two men from different social stations. Now, this marks Adele's major leap from the recording studio to the silver screen. And that does it on entertainment for tonight. My name is Kate Adeogun.
And that's all we have for you tonight. As always, we'd appreciate your feedback. Please share them using the number showing now on your screen. You can follow us on all social media platforms at News Central TV. We're live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, StarTimes channel 274, Avo TV, and on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Good night.